The fastest way to make a billionaire lose his mind is to let another man make you smile. The 42nd floor of Coal Dynamics smelled like black coffee, cold air conditioning, and expensive pressure. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan glowing beneath a gray February sky while employees moved through the executive wing like people walking through a church, quiet, careful, afraid to breathe too loudly. Because Adrian Cole was back in the building. Claire Bennett tightened her grip on the tablet against her chest as elevator doors slid open beside her with a soft chime. She had been working at Coal Dynamics for exactly 3 days, and already 3 separate people had warned her about the CEO. Don't interrupt him. Don't ask personal questions. Don't improvise. One assistant had looked her dead in the eye near the espresso machine that morning and whispered, "He once made a vice president cry over the wrong font." Claire honestly thought they were exaggerating. Then she walked into the executive conference room and realized they weren't exaggerating enough. Adrian Cole stood at the far end of the table in a charcoal suit worth more than Claire's rent for 6 months. Tall. Controlled. Ice cold. The kind of man who looked expensive even when he was angry. Especially when he was angry. "Who approved these numbers?" he asked quietly. Somehow the quietness made it worse. No one answered. 20 executives suddenly became fascinated with their laptops. Adrian tossed the financial report onto the marble table. "These projections are wrong." Claire glanced down at the papers in front of her. Her stomach tightened immediately. The projections were wrong. Not slightly wrong. Disaster level wrong. She looked around the room, waiting for someone else to say it. Nobody did. Adrian rubbed his jaw slowly, eyes sharp enough to cut glass. "I'm asking one last time." Silence. Claire swallowed hard. She could stay quiet. Smart people stayed quiet around powerful men like Adrian Cole. But then she imagined the mistake going public during the investor presentation scheduled in less than 2 hours. Millions of dollars. Headlines. Public humiliation. Before her brain could stop her, she spoke. "The acquisition percentage is duplicated from Q3. Every head in the room turned toward her. Adrian looked up slowly. "Excuse me?" Claire felt heat crawl into her cheeks, but she forced herself to continue. Page 7. The algorithm copied the old growth model into the new merger report. She stepped closer carefully, pointing at the screen. "Your actual operating margin should be 11.8, not 18.4. The room went completely still. Adrian stared at the numbers for several seconds. Then at her. His expression hardened. "And you are?" "Claire Bennett." "The new assistant?" "Yes." Adrian's eyes narrowed slightly. "You corrected my executive board in your first week?" Claire crossed her arms before she could stop herself. "Technically, I corrected the spreadsheet." A few executives looked physically ill hearing her say that. Adrian said nothing. He just stared at her with a level of intensity that made her pulse stumble. Claire suddenly understood why everyone feared him. It wasn't yelling. It wasn't threats. It was the way he looked at people like he could dismantle them piece by piece without raising his voice. Finally, Adrian stepped closer. "Do you enjoy embarrassing people, Ms. Bennett?" "Only when they're wrong." A dangerous silence followed. One executive actually inhaled sharply. Adrian's jaw flexed once. For one terrifying second, Claire thought she was about to be fired on the spot. Instead, something unexpected happened. Adrian smiled. Not warmly. Not kindly. Worse. "Interesting," he murmured. Then he turned toward the boardroom. Meeting adjourned. Executives practically fled for the door. Claire exhaled slowly, realizing her hands were shaking now that it was over. She turned to leave too. "Ms. Bennett." She stopped. Adrian loosened his cufflinks slowly without taking his eyes off her. "Starting tomorrow," he said calmly, "you'll be working directly for me." Claire blinked. "What?" "My assistant quit this morning." "Why?" Adrian slid the incorrect report into the trash. "Smart woman." Claire should have said no. Every instinct told her to run. But she needed the paycheck. Needed the health insurance. Needed this job badly enough to survive a man like Adrian Cole. Adrian studied her another second before speaking again. One more thing. What? Don't ever interrupt me again. Claire lifted her chin slightly. Then don't be wrong again. Adrian stared at her as the city lights flickered behind them like distant fire. And for the first time in years, the billionaire who controlled everything felt something dangerously close to losing control. Claire Bennett learned 3 things during her first week working for Adrian Cole. First, nobody looked him directly in the eye during meetings. Second, every assistant before her had quit within 6 months. And third, the man somehow managed to make 12,000 square feet of luxury office space feel colder than winter in Manhattan. The executive office sat above the city like a private kingdom of glass and steel. Black marble floors. Silent elevators. Expensive whiskey locked behind smoked glass cabinets nobody touched. Even the air smelled controlled. Claire stood beside Adrian's desk at 7:15 on a Tuesday morning while he reviewed contracts on a massive digital screen overlooking Fifth Avenue. Snow drifted slowly outside the windows, covering the city in pale gray light. Adrian had not spoken a single unnecessary word in almost 40 minutes. Claire honestly found it impressive. "Your 8 o'clock moved to 9:30, she said while organizing files into neat stacks. "The Zurich call starts in 20 minutes. And your mother's assistant called again." Adrian did not look up. "Ignore it." Claire glanced at him briefly. "She called 4 times. Then ignore it 4 times. His voice remained calm, but something underneath it felt sharp enough to cut skin. Claire wrote a small note on a yellow sticky pad anyway. "Call your mother back." Human beings usually like that. She placed it beside his coffee cup. Adrian finally looked up from the screen. "What is that?" "A reminder. I have a phone." Clearly not emotionally. Silence. Claire continued typing emails like she had not just insulted a billionaire to his face. Adrian stared at the sticky note for several long seconds before removing it carefully and placing it inside a drawer instead of throwing it away. Claire noticed. She pretended not to. The truth was, Adrian Cole confused her. Publicly, he was untouchable. Business magazines called him the most disciplined CEO in America. Investors worshipped him. Employees feared him. But behind closed doors, Claire noticed things other people missed. The untouched meals during 14-hour workdays. The way he rubbed his chest absent-mindedly during stressful calls. The fact that he sometimes stood at the windows late at night with the strangest expression on his face, like a man listening for something that never came back. He was lonely. Painfully lonely. And somehow completely unaware of it. "Why are you staring at me?" Adrian asked suddenly. Claire blinked. "I was wondering if you ever sleep." "I sleep." "When?" "Efficiently." She laughed before she could stop herself. Adrian slowly lifted his eyes toward her again. "Did I say something amusing? You sound like a robot pretending to be a businessman." His jaw tightened slightly. "Careful, Ms. Bennett. See? That." Claire pointed at him with her pen. "You do that voice every time somebody gets too close to you." Adrian stood from behind the desk, tall and intimidating in a dark navy suit that probably cost more than Claire's car. He walked toward her slowly until only a few feet separated them. Claire hated how aware she suddenly became of his presence. "And what exactly," Adrian asked quietly, "makes you think you know anything about me?" Claire swallowed once but refused to back down. "Because people who are happy do not work until midnight every night." Adrian stared at her so intensely it almost felt physical. Then his office doors suddenly opened. "Adrian, there you are." A warm voice filled the room. Ryan Mercer walked inside carrying architectural plans under one arm, snowflakes melting against the shoulders of his camel-colored coat. Unlike Adrian, Ryan smiled easily. The kind of smile that relaxed the room instead of freezing it. "Sorry I am late," Ryan said before noticing Claire. "And you must be the assistant everyone is terrified of." Claire smiled despite herself. "That obvious?" You are still employed after arguing with him for a week straight, Ryan said. Honestly, that is impressive. Adrian's expression darkened almost instantly at the sound of Claire laughing softly at Ryan's joke. It happened fast. Barely noticeable. But Claire caught it. The tightening jaw. The colder posture. The silence. And for reasons she could not explain yet. Adrian Cole suddenly looked at Ryan like he had become a problem. The next 2 weeks changed something inside the executive floor of Cole Dynamics, although nobody dared say it out loud. People started lingering near Adrian Cole's office longer than necessary. Meetings became strangely tense whenever Claire Bennett and Ryan Mercer ended up in the same room. And Adrian, somehow, became even colder than before. Claire noticed it first during a Thursday lunch meeting overlooking Bryant Park. Snow had melted into freezing rain outside while Manhattan traffic crawled below like glowing rivers of red brake lights. Ryan sat beside Claire reviewing hotel sketches for a luxury redevelopment project, while Adrian remained across the table answering investor emails with detached focus. You actually grew up in Vermont? Ryan asked Claire with genuine interest. That explains why you look emotionally healthy. Claire laughed softly. Barely. I left when I was 18. Still counts, Ryan said. People from New England always look like they know how to survive storms. Adrian's fingers paused briefly against his phone screen. Barely a second. But Claire saw it. Ryan leaned back comfortably in his chair. Meanwhile, Adrian here was probably born wearing a three-piece suit and criticizing stock markets. Claire smiled into her coffee cup. Honestly, that feels accurate. Adrian finally looked up. Are you both finished? His voice remained calm, but the air around the table immediately tightened. Ryan grinned. You know, one day you are going to smile voluntarily and the entire city will panic. Adrian ignored him completely. Instead, his eyes settled on Claire. The Prescott files. Already handled. The Singapore contracts? Sent an hour ago. The Zurich revisions? Claire slid the folder directly across the table without looking. Done too. Ryan let out a low whistle. That is terrifying. Claire shrugged casually. I like being efficient. Adrian stared at her another second too long before looking away again. And for reasons Claire did not fully understand, the silence afterward felt strangely charged. Later that night, the office emptied floor by floor until only executive lights remained glowing against the dark skyline. Claire sat cross-legged in her chair outside Adrian's office sorting investor reports while soft jazz played quietly from her phone speaker. The clock on her computer read 11:47 p.m. Again. She rubbed her tired eyes before standing to stretch. Through the glass office walls, she saw Adrian still working beneath dim overhead lighting, sleeves rolled neatly to his forearms, jaw tense while reviewing market projections. The man honestly worked like sleep personally offended him. Claire grabbed a yellow sticky note and scribbled quickly before sticking it onto the edge of his office door. Human beings require rest. Even billionaire robots. She smiled to herself and returned to her desk. 10 minutes later, Adrian stepped out of his office holding the note between two fingers. Do you enjoy leaving these everywhere? Claire kept typing. Do you enjoy pretending caffeine is a personality trait? Adrian leaned one shoulder against her desk, studying her carefully. You are unusually comfortable insulting your employer. You are unusually comfortable acting emotionally unavailable 24 hours a day. Adrian's eyes narrowed slightly. Emotion has nothing to do with business. That sounds exactly like something a man says right before a nervous breakdown. Silence. Then unexpectedly, Ryan Mercer appeared from the elevator carrying takeout bags in both hands. Please tell me either of you died in here. Claire's face brightened immediately. Is that pizza? Obviously, Ryan said. You both have the energy of divorced parents fighting over taxes. Claire burst out laughing. Real laughter this time. Warm. Unfiltered. Adrian went completely still beside her desk. Ryan handed Claire a paper plate while brushing rainwater from his coat. I saved you the last slice before Adrian started glaring at it too. Claire smiled up at him. You are officially my favorite person tonight. And there it was again. That feeling. Sharp. Sudden. Ugly. Adrian watched Ryan hand her the pizza while Claire laughed at something else he said, and for reasons he could not explain, the sight irritated him instantly. Not mildly. Not rationally. Deeply. Possessively. Adrian slowly loosened his tie, eyes fixed on the two of them. Then he spoke quietly. Ryan. Yeah? Do not distract my assistant. Ryan blinked once before smirking slightly. Interesting choice of words. Claire looked between both men carefully. And for the first time since meeting Adrian Cole, she realized something dangerous was beginning to happen beneath all that cold control. By early March, Claire Bennett had become the one thing inside Cole Dynamics nobody could ignore anymore. Not because she tried to stand out. Actually, the opposite. She wore simple neutral sweaters beneath tailored office coats, carried the same worn leather notebook every day, and still took the subway downtown instead of using the private car Adrian's previous assistants demanded within a week. But somehow she changed the atmosphere around her anyway. People smiled more when she entered rooms. Executives relaxed when she handled meetings. Even receptionists on lower floors waited for her sticky notes left beside coffee machines every Friday morning. You survived another week. Proud of you. The only person unaffected by her warmth seemed to be Adrian Cole. At least publicly. Privately, something far more dangerous had started happening. Adrian noticed everything about her now. The soft tapping sound her nails made against keyboards during late-night work sessions. The way she tucked loose strands of blonde hair behind one ear while concentrating. The vanilla scent that lingered faintly after she walked out of his office. It irritated him beyond reason. Worse, he started expecting her presence. One Wednesday evening, Adrian walked out of a 2-hour investor call already exhausted when he realized Claire was not at her desk. The empty chair immediately pulled his attention. He frowned slightly. Strange. She never left before him. Adrian glanced toward the digital clock on the wall. 9:18 p.m. He tried returning to his office. Tried reading contracts. Tried focusing on market forecasts. But 30 seconds later, he looked back toward the empty desk again. Irritating. Completely irrational. Before he could stop himself, Adrian pressed the security intercom button. Where is Ms. Bennett? The security guard downstairs sounded confused. She left 20 minutes ago with Mr. Mercer, sir. Silence. Adrian slowly lowered his hand from the speaker. With Ryan. Something twisted sharply in his chest before logic could catch up to it. Adrian hated the feeling instantly. The next morning only made it worse. Claire walked into the office laughing softly at something on her phone while carrying 2 coffees. Ryan followed behind her, sleeves rolled casually, smiling in that easy, effortless way Adrian suddenly found unbearable. Morning, Claire said brightly before placing 1 coffee on Ryan's desk. Thanks again for last night. Ryan grinned. Anytime. Adrian stepped out of his office at that exact moment. The entire executive floor somehow became quieter. Claire noticed him immediately. Good morning. Adrian's eyes dropped briefly to the coffee in her hand. You are late. Claire blinked. By 4 minutes. Still late. Ryan leaned casually against the desk beside her. Relax, Adrian. I kidnapped your assistant for pizza and architecture talk. Entirely my fault. Adrian looked at Ryan slowly. Congratulations. Ryan's smile widened slightly. You jealous? The question sounded playful. But the silence afterward did not. Claire looked up from her coffee cup carefully. Adrian's expression remained unreadable, but something in his posture shifted almost invisibly. Colder. Tighter. I do not get jealous, Adrian said calmly. Ryan laughed softly. That sounded convincing in your head, huh? Adrian ignored him and turned toward Claire instead. Conference room. 5 minutes. Then he disappeared into his office without another word. Claire exhaled quietly. Okay, that was weird. Ryan watched Adrian's closed office doors thoughtfully before lowering his voice. No, Claire. What is weird is that Adrian Cole notices who drives you home. Her stomach tightened unexpectedly. You are reading too much into it. Am I? Ryan asked gently. Claire did not answer. Because part of her already knew Ryan was right. 5 minutes later she stepped into Adrian's conference room carrying merger files against her chest. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected Manhattan washed silver beneath heavy rain clouds while Adrian stood near the screen reviewing presentation notes. Close the door, he said quietly. Claire obeyed. The second the door clicked shut, Adrian finally looked at her fully. You and Ryan seem comfortable together. Claire frowned slightly. We are friends. Adrian's jaw flexed once. Friends. Yes. Silence stretched between them. Then Adrian stepped closer slowly. You should be careful around men like Ryan. Claire stared at him in disbelief. Men like Ryan? Charming men. Claire crossed her arms. And what exactly is wrong with charming? Adrian looked directly into her eyes. They make people lower their guard. Something about the way he said it felt personal. Heavy. Like a warning built from experience. Claire's heartbeat slowed strangely beneath his gaze. You know, she said softly. You talk about emotions like they are dangerous. Adrian's expression darkened slightly. That is because they are. And for the first time since meeting him, Claire realized Adrian Cole was not afraid of losing control in business. He was afraid of losing control over himself. The annual Cole Foundation Winter Gala was the kind of Manhattan event people spent months trying to enter, and years trying to forget they were not invited to. Black luxury cars lined the glowing curb outside the Grand Regent Hotel while photographers shouted names beneath gold chandelier lights spilling through revolving glass doors. Women stepped out in silk gowns and diamonds worth entire neighborhoods. Men adjusted tuxedo cuffs while pretending they did not care who was watching them. Claire Bennett stood in front of the mirror inside a private hotel suite on the 31st floor trying to convince herself she belonged there. She definitely did not. The dark emerald dress hugging softly against her figure had been delivered to her apartment that morning with no explanation except a note written in sharp familiar handwriting. Wear this tonight. Do not argue. AC Claire still had not decided whether that irritated her or affected her. You look incredible. Claire turned as Ryan Mercer leaned casually against the suite doorway in a black tuxedo, one hand in his pocket. His warm smile appeared instantly when he saw her fully. Wow, he said softly. Adrian is going to completely lose his mind. Claire laughed nervously while adjusting one sleeve. Please do not start. I am serious. Ryan stepped closer carefully. You clean up dangerously well, Claire Bennett. Before she could answer, another voice cut sharply through the room. We are leaving in 2 minutes. Adrian stood near the hallway entrance already dressed in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo that somehow made him look even more intimidating. Cold. Controlled. Expensive. But the second his eyes landed on Claire, something in his expression changed. Not dramatically. Adrian Cole was too disciplined for dramatic reactions. It happened smaller than that. His breathing paused almost invisibly. His eyes darkened slightly. And for one dangerous second, he forgot to speak at all. Claire suddenly became painfully aware of herself beneath his gaze. Adrian recovered quickly. Too quickly. The car is downstairs, he said flatly before turning away. Ryan watched him leave with visible amusement. Oh yeah, he murmured. That man is absolutely doomed. 40 minutes later, camera flashes exploded across the hotel ballroom while orchestras played softly beneath crystal chandeliers the size of small apartments. Claire remained close beside Adrian as donors, investors, and politicians greeted him nonstop. She noticed the way everyone changed around him. Voices softened. Smiles tightened. Entire conversations shifted the second Adrian entered a room. Power followed him naturally. But tonight something else followed him too. His attention kept drifting back toward her. Every time another man approached Claire, Adrian noticed. Every laugh. Every glance. Every hand lingering too long during introductions. It was exhausting. Irritating. Impossible to ignore. You are staring again, Claire whispered quietly beside him near the champagne tower. Adrian sipped his drink without looking at her. At what? Me. You are imagining things. Claire smiled faintly. Sure. Before Adrian could respond, Ryan appeared beside them carrying 2 champagne glasses. Mind if I borrow Claire for one dance? Adrian's jaw tightened immediately. Yes. Ryan blinked once. Wow. Possessive. Claire looked between them awkwardly. It is one dance. Adrian's eyes settled on Ryan. The answer is still no. Ryan slowly raised one eyebrow. You know she is a person, right? Not company property. Silence. Dangerous silence. Around them, ballroom conversations continued beneath soft music and camera flashes while Adrian stared at Ryan with unreadable intensity. Then Claire gently took the champagne glass from Ryan's hand. I would actually love one dance. Adrian looked at her instantly. Something sharp flickered across his face before disappearing beneath control. Claire followed Ryan onto the ballroom floor moments later while live piano music filled the room. Ryan rested one respectful hand lightly against her back while they moved slowly beneath warm chandelier light. You okay? He asked softly. Claire glanced toward Adrian standing near the bar across the room. Honestly? I cannot tell anymore. Ryan followed her gaze and nearly laughed. Adrian had not looked away from them once. Not for a second. His whiskey glass remained untouched in his hand while his attention stayed locked entirely on Claire dancing with another man. The expression on his face no longer looked irritated. It looked territorial. Ryan lowered his voice carefully. Claire. Yeah? I think Adrian Cole is jealous enough to burn down half of Manhattan tonight. And across the ballroom, Adrian loosened his tie slowly while watching another man make Claire Bennett smile. Claire could still feel Adrian Cole watching her long after the dance ended. It followed her through the rest of the gala like heat beneath her skin. Every time she looked across the ballroom, his eyes were already there. Calm on the surface. Dangerous underneath. By 11:30 the event finally began winding down. Donors drifted toward elevators while staff cleared champagne glasses beneath dimming chandelier light. Claire slipped off her heels near the private suite hallway with a relieved sigh, carrying folders against her chest while exhaustion settled heavily into her bones. Long night? Ryan asked beside her. You have no idea. He smiled softly. Dinner tomorrow? Claire hesitated for exactly 1 second too long. Ryan, relax, he said gently. I am asking because I like you. Not because I expect anything. Claire looked down briefly before smiling faintly. Okay. Dinner sounds nice. Ryan's expression warmed instantly. Good. I will text you. Neither of them noticed Adrian standing motionless at the far end of the hallway near the elevator doors until the silence changed. Ryan saw him first. His smile faded slightly. Adrian's tuxedo jacket hung over one shoulder now, tie loosened, dark hair slightly disheveled from the long evening. But what unsettled Claire most was the look in his eyes. Not anger. Something far more personal. Ryan glanced between them carefully before speaking. I should go. Claire nodded slowly. Good night. Night, Claire. Ryan passed Adrian quietly on the way toward the elevators. Adrian did not acknowledge him. He only watched Claire standing alone near the suite hallway beneath soft gold lighting. You said yes, Adrian said finally. Claire frowned slightly. To what? Dinner. The words sounded strangely sharp coming from him. Claire folded her arms carefully. You were listening? You answered the question. Yes, she replied calmly. I did. Silence stretched between them. Adrian stared at her for several long seconds before speaking again. Ryan is not serious. Claire almost laughed. And you know that because? Because men like Ryan enjoy attention. That is interesting coming from a billionaire CEO worshipped by half of Manhattan. Adrian stepped closer slowly. I am trying to protect you. Claire's heartbeat stumbled unexpectedly. From dinner? From disappointment. Something about his voice sounded different tonight. Less controlled. More tired. Claire softened slightly despite herself. Adrian. He suddenly looked away toward the empty ballroom behind them, jaw tightening hard. Forget it. Then he walked past her without another word. Claire hesitated before following him down the private hallway leading toward the executive suites. Adrian, wait. He stopped but did not turn around. What? Claire swallowed once. Why do you care so much? Silence. Heavy silence. Adrian finally faced her again, and for the first time since she met him, he looked genuinely exhausted. Not powerful. Not intimidating. Just tired in a way money could never fix. You would not understand, he said quietly. Claire studied him carefully beneath the dim hallway lights. His breathing looked uneven now. One hand pressed subtly against his chest like he was trying to steady himself. Are you okay? I am fine. You do not look fine. Adrian suddenly closed his eyes briefly, shoulders tightening hard beneath the white dress shirt. Claire's stomach dropped immediately. Adrian? His breathing grew shallow. Controlled but strained. Like someone trying desperately not to panic in public. Claire stepped closer instinctively. Hey! Adrian turned away sharply. Do not! You are having trouble breathing. I said I am fine. But his voice cracked slightly on the last word. That terrified her more than anything else could have. Claire gently reached for his wrist anyway. Adrian froze instantly beneath her touch. The hallway became completely silent except for his uneven breathing and distant elevator music somewhere below the hotel floors. Look at me, Claire whispered softly. Adrian resisted for several painful seconds before finally lifting his eyes toward hers. And suddenly she saw it clearly. Fear. Real fear. Hidden beneath years of control and discipline and cold perfection. Breathe slower, Claire said carefully. Just focus on me for a second. Adrian stared at her while struggling to steady his breathing. Claire kept her hand lightly against his wrist. Warm. Grounding. Human. That is it, she whispered. You are okay. Minutes passed quietly beneath soft hotel lighting while Manhattan glittered beyond tall windows around them. Eventually Adrian's breathing slowed enough for tension to leave his shoulders slightly. Either of them moved away. Either of them spoke. Claire became painfully aware of how close they were standing now. Adrian's eyes dropped briefly toward her lips before lifting back to her face again. The air between them suddenly felt too quiet. Too intimate. Adrian stepped closer almost unconsciously. Claire forgot to breathe entirely. Then Adrian's phone rang sharply inside his pocket. Reality crashed back instantly. Adrian pulled away first, expression hardening again beneath familiar control. Ryan Mercer's name glowed across Claire's phone screen at the exact same moment. And Adrian saw it. Everything between Claire Bennett and Adrian Cole changed after the gala hallway. Not loudly. Not officially. But in the quiet, dangerous ways that mattered most. Adrian stopped pretending he did not notice her. He noticed everything now. Which calls made her smile. Which mornings she looked tired. Which songs she hummed under her breath while organizing contracts at midnight. And Claire noticed him noticing. That was the problem. 3 days after the gala, Manhattan woke beneath freezing rain and heavy fog rolling between skyscrapers while Claire stepped into the executive office balancing coffee cups in both hands. The second she entered, she felt tension in the air. Adrian stood near the conference windows already in a dark suit, speaking sharply into his phone while 3 board members sat silently nearby pretending not to look uncomfortable. Then cancel the acquisition, Adrian said coldly. I am not repeating myself. Claire quietly placed his coffee near the edge of the table along with a yellow sticky note. You cannot survive on caffeine and emotional repression forever. Adrian's eyes flicked briefly toward the note before returning to the investors. But Claire noticed something dangerous now. He never threw the notes away. Ever. Around noon, Ryan Mercer arrived carrying rolled architectural blueprints and enough warmth to shift the mood of the entire office instantly. "I brought lunch," he announced while setting paper bags onto Claire's desk. "Because none of you know how to behave like functioning humans." Claire laughed softly. "You are becoming my favorite person." Adrian looked up immediately from across the room. Again. That tiny reaction. Sharp eyes. Tight jaw. Ryan noticed too this time. He smiled slowly while handing Claire her sandwich. "Actually," Ryan said casually, "I wanted to ask you something." Claire looked up. "Okay?" "Chicago." Adrian's typing stopped. Ryan leaned against the desk beside her. "My firm is opening a new creative branch there this summer. We need someone smart enough to manage executive operations without losing their mind." Claire blinked. "You are offering me a job?" "A very good one." Ryan smiled gently. "Higher salary. Better hours. Less emotionally terrifying billionaire bosses." Claire laughed quietly despite herself. But before she could answer, Adrian stood from his chair. "Claire. Conference room. Now." The room instantly fell silent. Ryan straightened slightly. Claire hesitated before following Adrian down the hallway into the private conference room overlooking the rain-covered skyline. The second the doors closed, Adrian turned toward her. "You are not taking that job." Claire stared at him in disbelief. "Excuse me? Chicago is not happening. You do not get to decide that." Adrian stepped closer slowly. "Ryan is distracting you from your work." Claire crossed her arms immediately. "No. You are distracting me." Silence hit the room hard. Adrian's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Claire continued before courage disappeared. "You pull me close whenever another man looks at me. Then the second things become real, you shut down completely." Adrian's jaw tightened. "That is not what this is." "Then what is it?" He said nothing. And somehow that hurt more. Claire shook her head slowly. "Exactly?" She turned toward the door, but Adrian spoke again before she reached it. Quiet. Rougher than usual. "Do not go to Chicago." Claire stopped walking. Her heartbeat slowed painfully inside her chest. "Why?" Adrian stared at her silently for several long seconds while rain streaked across the giant windows behind him. The billionaire who controlled billion-dollar markets suddenly looked completely lost trying to answer one simple question. Why? Finally he looked away first. "Because..." His voice failed briefly. "Because the idea of another man having your attention all the time is becoming impossible for me." Claire's breath caught. Adrian stepped closer again, eyes darker now, emotion finally breaking through years of control. "I cannot focus when you are with him." Another step. "I cannot sleep after hearing you laugh with him." Another step. "And every time he touches you." He stopped himself sharply, breathing uneven again. Claire stood frozen beneath the weight of his confession. Adrian ran one hand through his hair roughly before speaking quieter this time. "I do not know what is happening to me." The honesty in his voice shattered something inside her completely. But before Claire could answer, voices suddenly echoed outside the glass conference doors. Board members approaching. Reality returning. Adrian instantly stepped back, expression hardening again beneath cold discipline. Too fast. Too familiar. Claire looked at him for one long painful second before whispering softly. "That is the problem, Adrian. You only tell the truth when you think nobody else will hear it." Then she walked out of the conference room while Adrian stood motionless beneath the gray Manhattan skyline, realizing too late that he might finally lose the one person he could no longer live without. Claire Bennett resigned exactly 12 days later. Not dramatically. Not emotionally. That somehow made it worse. Manhattan was wrapped in pale April rain the morning she walked into Adrian Cole's office carrying a single white envelope in one hand and her leather notebook in the other. The city outside the windows looked blurred and distant beneath storm clouds hanging low over Fifth Avenue. Adrian stood near the glass wall reviewing financial reports when she entered. The Zurich investors moved their call to. He stopped speaking the second he saw the envelope. Silence filled the office immediately. Claire placed it carefully on his desk. I accepted the Chicago position. Adrian stared at the envelope without touching it. No. Claire blinked once. That is not really your decision anymore. You are not leaving. His voice sounded calm. Too calm. The dangerous kind. Claire folded her arms slowly. Adrian, how much is Ryan offering you? She looked at him in disbelief. That is your first question. Adrian finally lifted his eyes toward her. There was no anger there now. Just something exhausted. Frayed. Tell me what you need and I will fix it. Claire's heart twisted painfully. That is exactly the problem. Adrian stepped around the desk toward her. Claire, you think control is the same thing as caring. Her voice stayed soft, but every word landed hard between them. You pull me close whenever you are afraid somebody else will take me away, but the second things become vulnerable, you hide behind work and meetings and walls. Adrian's jaw tightened sharply. I am trying. No, Claire whispered. You are trying not to feel. Silence. Rain tapped softly against the giant windows around them while Manhattan moved far below like another world entirely. Adrian looked at her for a long time before speaking quietly. When are you leaving? Friday. The answer hit him visibly. Claire watched him look away toward the skyline, one hand pressing briefly against the edge of the desk like he needed something solid beneath him. Ryan is flying out with me this weekend, she added carefully. Adrian closed his eyes once. Just once. But she saw it. The damage. I see. Claire's chest tightened painfully. Part of her wanted him to stop her. To finally say something real without fear attached to it. But Adrian only nodded once and stepped back behind his walls again. Very well, he said coldly. Human resources will handle the transition. The sudden distance in his voice hurt more than yelling ever could have. Claire swallowed hard before nodding slowly. Goodbye, Adrian. He did not answer. Claire walked out of the office without looking back because she knew if she did, she might stay. And Adrian Cole would never ask her to. The next week shattered him quietly. Nobody inside Cole Dynamics understood what was happening to their CEO. Meetings ended early because Adrian stopped paying attention halfway through presentations. He snapped at investors over minor mistakes. One vice president accidentally mentioned Chicago during a board discussion, and Adrian immediately walked out without explanation. Worse than the anger was the silence. Claire's desk remained empty beside his office. No sticky notes. No sarcastic comments. No soft humming late at night while she worked. Adrian hated how much he noticed the absence. On Thursday night, long after midnight, Adrian sat alone inside his dark office staring at the city lights below while rain streaked slowly across the windows. His tie hung loose around his neck. An untouched whiskey glass sat beside stacks of unfinished contracts. For the first time in years, Adrian could not force himself to care about work. His chest felt hollow. Restless. Wrong. Finally, almost unconsciously, he opened the bottom drawer of his desk. Inside sat dozens of yellow sticky notes Claire had left over the past months. Human beings require rest. Even billionaire robots. Call your mother back. Human beings usually like that. Try eating lunch today. Revolutionary concept. Adrian picked one up carefully between his fingers. Then another. Then another. His throat tightened unexpectedly. Every note looked small and ordinary. But somehow they felt more personal than anything anyone had ever given him. Adrian leaned back slowly in his chair, eyes closing briefly while Claire's voice echoed through his memory. You only tell the truth when you think nobody else will hear it. The realization hit him all at once. Brutal in its simplicity. He did not want to control Claire. He wanted her near him because she made him feel human again. And now she was leaving. Adrian suddenly stood so fast his chair rolled backward across the office floor. His pulse hammered hard beneath his ribs while one thought repeated over and over inside his head. Go get her. Chicago greeted Claire Bennett with cold wind, gray skies, and the strange ache of starting over. 2 months after leaving Manhattan, she stood inside the newly renovated Mercer Creative headquarters overlooking the Chicago River, while movers carried furniture across polished concrete floors. The office smelled like fresh paint and coffee beans from the cafe downstairs. Ryan had been kind through all of it. Patient. Gentle. Never pushing her for more than friendship when he realized part of her heart still lived somewhere else. You disappeared for a second, Ryan said softly while stepping beside her near the windows. Claire blinked back toward the city skyline. Sorry. Ryan smiled knowingly. You are thinking about him again. Claire looked down quietly. She hated that he was right. Because no matter how peaceful Chicago felt compared to Manhattan, no matter how much easier her life became away from Adrian Cole's emotional chaos, part of her still missed him in ways she could not explain. She missed the tension in his voice when he said her name. Missed the late nights. The sticky notes. The impossible intensity in his eyes whenever another man stood too close to her. Most of all, she missed the version of Adrian hidden beneath all that control. The lonely man who looked at her in hotel hallways like she was the only thing keeping him grounded. Claire. Ryan's voice pulled her back gently. You know you do not owe me anything, right? She looked up slowly. Ryan smiled sadly this time. I like you enough to want you happy. Even if that happiness is not with me. Emotion tightened painfully in her chest. Before Claire could answer, the elevator doors behind them opened. Footsteps echoed softly across the office floor. Claire turned casually at first. Then froze completely. Adrian Cole stood near the entrance wearing a dark overcoat dusted lightly with snow, one hand gripping the handle of a worn leather box. He looked exhausted. Not physically. Emotionally. Like a man who had spent months fighting himself, and finally lost. Ryan exhaled quietly beside her. Well, he murmured. That explains the private jet downstairs. Adrian's eyes never left Claire. Can we talk? Ryan looked between both of them before nodding once toward Claire. I will give you 2 a minute. Then he walked away quietly, leaving the entire office strangely silent. Claire's heartbeat pounded hard beneath her ribs while Adrian stepped closer slowly. You should not be here. Probably not. His voice sounded rougher than she remembered. More honest. Adrian stopped a few feet in front of her, snow melting against the shoulders of his coat. For several long seconds neither of them spoke. Then Adrian carefully placed the leather box onto the table between them. Claire frowned slightly. What is this? Open it. Slowly, she lifted the lid. Her breath caught instantly. Inside sat every yellow sticky note she had ever left him. Perfectly preserved. Organized carefully beneath glass. Claire looked up speechless. Adrian finally spoke quietly. I kept every single one. Something inside her shattered completely at the sound of his voice. Adrian ran one tired hand through his hair before continuing. You asked me once why I cared so much? He swallowed hard. I did not understand it then. Claire stared at him silently while snow drifted softly beyond the giant windows around them. Adrian stepped closer. You walked into my life and ruined every system I built to avoid feeling anything. A weak, almost broken smile crossed his face briefly. You made me care about things besides work. You made me call my mother back. You made me sleep occasionally. Claire laughed softly through sudden tears. Adrian's expression gentled instantly hearing the sound. I spent years thinking control meant strength, he admitted quietly. But losing you was the first thing that ever made me realize how empty my life actually was. The honesty in his voice felt unbearable now. Raw. Real. Adrian reached slowly into his coat pocket and pulled out one final yellow sticky note folded carefully in half. Claire recognized her handwriting immediately before even opening it. Try letting somebody love you someday. It might not destroy you. Her vision blurred instantly. Adrian looked directly into her eyes. I am trying now. Silence wrapped around them softly while Chicago's snow drifted outside the windows like pale light. Claire stepped closer before she could overthink it. Adrian's breathing faltered the second she touched his hand. You flew across the country for sticky notes? She whispered emotionally. Adrian's eyes softened completely for the first time since she met him. No. He gently intertwined his fingers with hers. I flew across the country for you. Claire stared at him for one long heartbeat before finally smiling through tears. You know, she whispered softly, you are still emotionally terrifying. Adrian let out the quietest laugh she had ever heard from him. Real. Unguarded. Human. Then he leaned his forehead lightly against hers while snow covered Chicago beyond the glass. Stay, he whispered. And this time, Claire Bennett did.